Imagine like trying to build a delicate handcrafted wooden deck inside an industrial convection oven.
Oh, wow. That sounds terrible.
Right. And then you just leave it there to bake for a few months, and after that you toss it straight into a commercial freezer?
Just for good measure.
Exactly. And then you sandblast it. I mean, that extreme scenario is essentially what the weather in West Texas does to outdoor landscaping.
Yeah, it really is. It's a brutal environment.
You are dealing with a climate that is, actively trying to destroy everything you put outside.
Literally everything.
Yet human nature dictates that we still want the rustic charm of, like, a historic cobblestone street or the warmth of weathered timber right in our backyards.
It really is the ultimate architectural paradox, isn't it?
Totally.
We crave these organic, natural aesthetics for our living spaces, but nature itself is incredibly hostile to the organic materials we traditionally use to achieve those looks.
And that actually brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are unpacking an incredibly detailed guide from 806 Lubbock Concrete, and it's focused entirely on stamped and colored concrete.
Yeah, this is a fascinating source.
It really is. We are going to explore the intersection of extreme weather engineering, industrial chemistry, and high-end landscape design. Because getting that perfect cobblestone or, timber look in a volatile climate requires a lot more than just pouring a standard gray sidewalk.
Oh, far more. I mean, what this source material reveals is really a masterclass in manipulating industrial materials to outsmart nature.
Right.
We are looking at how you can take one of the most rigid utilitarian substances on Earth and chemically coax it into mimicking delicate natural environment.
While surviving the weather.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All while engineering it to withstand some of the most dynamic thermal cycles in the country.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand why this specific engineering is even necessary, we have to look at the ground itself.
The dirt.
Yeah, the dirt. The guide focuses heavily on the Lubbock, Texas area. Out there, you have scorching summer temperatures that can literally soften asphalt.
And then plummeting winter nights.
Right, so if you think about traditional landscaping like laying down individual brick pavers or natural flagstone, putting those materials in that specific climate is like trying to build a jigsaw puzzle on a waterbed.
That is a great way to put it.
Because the clay soil, it's constantly expanding when it gets wet and then shrinking when it dries out.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that constant soil movement is exactly why a solid concrete slab becomes the premier architectural solution.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you use individual brick pavers, natural flagstone, or even timber planks, you are inherently building with joints. You're introducing hundreds, sometimes thousands of tiny gaps into the surface of your patio or driveway.
Which means every single one of those gaps is a separate structural liability, just waiting for the ground to shift.
Precisely. As the moisture levels in the soil change, or, as the ground freezes and thaws, those individual puzzle pieces move independently.
Right, they get all wavy.
Yeah, they heave upward, they sink, they separate. A properly engineered, solid stamped concrete surface entirely eliminates those joints. By pouring a monolithic slab, you're creating a singular structural core.
So it all moves together as one piece.
Exactly. That structural integrity distributes the environmental stress across the entire footprint, preventing the surface from failing when the ground beneath it undergoes those extreme changes.
For you listening, just imagine the practical daily relief of that. I mean, the source material points out two massive headaches that a jointless surface instantly solves: weeds sprouting up and insects.
Yeah. The ants.
Yes, with brick pavers, ants will constantly excavate the locking sand from beneath the surface, which destabilizes the bricks.
And then you have to continuously sweep in new sand.
Over and over, only for the weather and the pests to carry it away again. A solid slab shuts that ecosystem down entirely. But I want to challenge the prep process here for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If the goal is a monolithic slab that floats over this shifting soil, why does the guide emphasize laying down a thick aggregate rock base first? Doesn't the concrete just sit directly on the dirt?
Oh, no. That is a critical point. You cannot pour concrete directly onto expansive clay soil and expect it to survive.
Really?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
The contractors have to excavate the native soil, compact what remains, and then introduce a robust aggregate base, usually crushed stone.
Oh, okay. Why the stone?
That base layer provides essential drainage. If water pools directly underneath a solid concrete slab and then freezes overnight, the expansion of that ice creates a massive upward force.
It'll just crack it.
It will crack the slab from the bottom up. The aggregate gives the water a porous space to drain away from the concrete before a freeze happens.
So the rock base basically breaks the capillary action of the water. You're giving the ice room to expand where it won't, like, push against the bottom of your patio.
Exactly. And that base is paired with a grid of steel reinforcement within the concrete itself. The decorative flatwork isn't just a surface-level aesthetic treatment.
Right. It's heavy duty.
Yeah, the structural core beneath it must be exceptionally strong to handle the sheer weight of the material and the tension forces of the shifting ground.
Let's talk about the actual installation then, because the guide mentions the wind on the South Plains as a major factor.
Oh, the wind is a huge factor.
My initial thought reading that was, well, wouldn't a constant dry breeze actually make the job easier? Like, you pour the wet cement, the wind dries it faster, you stamp it, and you're done ahead of schedule.
This raises an important question about how concrete actually works. It's a very common misconception that concrete, quote-unquote, dries in the way a puddle of water evaporates or, paint dries on a wall.
Wait, it doesn't dry?
Not exactly. Concrete cures through a process called hydration. It's an exothermic chemical reaction where the cement paste forms microscopic crystals that interlock with the sand and gravel.
So it's actively growing a crystalline matrix, not just losing water.
Correct. The water is a necessary chemical ingredient for those crystals to form. So the wind is actually a massive hurdle for installers.
Because it steals the water.
Exactly. A sharp increase in wind speed pulls the moisture out of the very top layer of the concrete before the hydration reaction has time to finish.
Oh, wow.
This creates a condition called plastic shrinkage, which leads to surface cracking. But even more critically for stamped concrete, it ruins the pliability window.
Because the surface gets a crust on it before they can press the heavy stamps in.
Yes, exactly. The installers are in a high-stakes race against time. The delicate science of hydration rates is everything here.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It is. The mixture must remain pliable enough to accept the stamping mats, which are made of dense polyurethane, by the way. So you get a clean, uniform imprint of the stone texture. But the concrete also has to be firm enough at its core so that the intricate details of the stamp, like the faux grout lines, don't just slump and melt away once the mat is lifted off.
Okay, wait, why polyurethane? Why not just use metal stamps or, like, hard plastic?
Polyurethane is uniquely suited for this because of its specific chemical properties. It's heavy enough to press deep into the wet mixture without warping,
Okay.
but it is flexible enough that the installers can peel it back from the surface without dragging the wet concrete with it. Plus, it doesn't chemically react with the highly alkaline cement paste.
That makes a lot of sense. The timing aspect sounds insane, though.
Yeah.
You are basically managing a massive open-air chemical reaction while the weather is actively trying to close your window of opportunity.
That's a perfect summary.
Which brings us to the visual transformation. Once they master the timing of the pour and they get the texture right, how do they transform raw, gray, industrial cement into a highly detailed replica of natural stone or wood?
That is where the chemistry of color comes into play. And it involves a multi-step process. I mean, it is absolutely not as simple as waiting for the slab to cure and then painting the top of it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source outlines two primary methods used to pigment the slab.
Right.
The first is called integral color. The way I visualize this is it's like baking chocolate chips into a cake batter.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. They take synthetic iron oxide pigments and mix them directly into the cement truck before the material is even poured out.
That's a highly accurate analogy. Because the iron oxide is mixed into the wet cement paste inside the truck drum, the pigment is distributed consistently throughout the entire depth of the slab.
Oh, so it's not just on top.
Exactly. The iron oxide permanently dyes the cementitious binder. The massive benefit here is that if the surface were to get deeply chipped, say, by a dropped hammer or heavy machinery, the concrete exposed beneath would still match the surface.
Right. It creates a solid, unified base hue. But they don't stop there. Because a uniform base color just looks like dyed concrete, it doesn't look like organic rock.
Right. Nature isn't just one flat color.
Exactly. That's where the second method comes in, which the guide calls color hardeners, or broadcast colors. These are dry powder formulations that the installers literally broadcast or, like, throw by hand directly onto the surface of the wet concrete before stamping.
What's fascinating here is that the primary function of this broadcast color isn't purely aesthetic.
Wait, it's not just for looks.
No. While it does create an exceptionally vibrant surface layer, it triggers a secondary chemical reaction. These dry powders are heavily loaded with silica quartz and specialized cementitious finders.
Okay.
When that powder hits the wet surface of the slab, it absorbs the bleed water coming up from the concrete and chemically densifies the top layer.
So by adding this color powder, you were actually altering the physical structure of the patio.
Yes, you are increasing the compressive strength of the top millimeter of the concrete. You're creating a microscopic matrix that is significantly denser than the structural slab beneath it.
Wow.
This makes the surface highly resistant to abrasion from foot traffic or patio furniture.
You are literally armor plating the concrete using colored dust. That is brilliant engineering.
It really is.
But we still have a practical problem here. Even with the base color and the armor-plated top color, they still have to press those heavy polyurethane mats into the wet surface.
Right.
I don't care how inert polyurethane is, if you press a heavy rubber mat into wet, sticky cement, it's going to create suction.
Oh, absolutely.
When you pull it up, you're going to rip that newly armored surface right off.
It would be a complete failure of the surface.
Oh, we're saying.
So to prevent that suction, installers apply a release agent immediately before stamping.
What's that?
This can be a hydrophobic powder or a liquid. Its mechanical job is simply to act as a barrier, preventing the polyurethane mats from sticking to the wet cement. But this is where the true artistry of the process is revealed, because the release agent itself is tinted with a dark accent color.
So as the chemical is doing its job of stopping the stamp from sticking, it's simultaneously leaving a third layer of color behind.
Exactly. When the installer steps on the heavy stamp, the hydrostatic pressure forces some of that dark tinted release agent deep into the recessed areas of the pattern.
It's like the fake grout lines.
Yes. The faux grout lines, the deep pits, and the clefts of the faux stone.
It's like how water rushes into a valley.
Precisely. After the concrete has fully cured over a few days, the contractors return and pressure wash the slab. They wash away the excess release agent from the high points of the texture, but that dark secondary accent color remains permanently trapped in the low points.
Oh, I see.
That trapped pigment is what provides the visual depth, the shadowing, and the incredibly realistic antiqued appearance of natural weathered material.
It is exactly how a miniature painter uses a dark ink wash to bring out the tiny details on a model, just, scaled up to the size of an entire driveway.
That's a great comparison.
It's fascinating how the chemistry solves the aesthetic and structural problems simultaneously.
Truly.
Now that we understand the incredible strength in the coloring process, let's look at how this is actually applied to a property's footprint to elevate the living space. Because the guide lists a variety of structural patterns that you can choose from.
The tooling options are quite extensive. It allows the concrete to complement almost any architectural style or natural landscape.
Yeah, you've got patterns like ashlar slate, which gives you varied rectangular and square shapes with a very distinct cleft texture.
Very popular.
Then there's London cobble, which delivers that historic, rounded cobblestone street look. They have a seamless texture that mimics the continuous organic surface of natural stone without any defined grout lines.
Which is great for a modern, minimalist look.
Right, and then there's wood plank.
The wood plank pattern has become particularly sought after in residential design.
I have to ask, though, because this seems totally counterintuitive to me. If you want the rustic look of a timber deck, why go through the immense trouble of hauling in heavy machinery, managing exothermic chemical reactions, broadcasting quartz powders, and pressing rubber mats to fake it?
Right. Why not just use wood?
Yeah, why not just buy the timber and build a deck?
It all comes back to the environmental hostility we discussed at the beginning. The guide explicitly highlights that concrete wood planks deliver the aesthetic warmth of wood without any of the inherent biological or environmental vulnerabilities.
Because real wood is organic.
Exactly. It splinters. It's highly susceptible to termite damage and wood rot.
And it absorbs water like a sponge.
It does. Furthermore, in a climate with intense solar radiation like Lubbock, the UV degradation on a natural timber deck is relentless. The thermal mass of wood is low, and the sun bakes the moisture out of it.
Which causes the boards to warp and cup and splinter.
You are committing to a lifetime of sanding, chemical stripping, and restaining.
Oh, no thanks.
Right. A sealed concrete patio, on the other hand, possesses high thermal mass. It actually reflects UV rays and resists weather degradation entirely. It will never rot, and termites cannot eat iron oxide.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You get the earthy color palette, the desert sands, the terracottas, the warm grays, but it behaves like a geological formation.
Exactly.
And the structural strength of this slab allows you to connect functional zones across a property seamlessly, right?
It fundamentally changes how you can utilize the property.
Hmm.
A standard concrete patio provides a level, durable foundation for incredibly heavy features.
Like what?
Custom outdoor kitchens, masonry fire pits, or hot tubs. And you can do this without the risk of the foundation settling unevenly over time.
Oh, that's a good point.
You can integrate that main patio horizontally by pouring curving walkways stamped with a matching slate pattern, creating an inviting, solid surface transition from the backyard straight up to the front driveway.
The guide also mentions that standard driveways can be entirely upgraded with colored borders, or like a stamped apron near the street, which drastically improves the curb appeal.
Definitely.
But the part of the source material that really caught my attention is when they introduce vertical integration.
Yes. Vertical integration is where stamped concrete moves from being a simple floor covering to a comprehensive architectural solution.
How so?
Consider a residential yard with steep rolling slope. Historically, those areas suffer from constant soil erosion and are basically unusable space.
Right, you can't really put a dining table on a 30-degree incline.
Exactly. By excavating that slope and building engineered retaining walls, you intervene in the erosion process and carve out level, usable terraces.
Okay, so you flatten it out.
Right. Now, you can pour a new stamped patio on that newly flattened terrace,
Hmm.
but rather than just having a plain, utilitarian gray cinder block wall holding back the dirt, you can integrate the vertical wall into the design.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The masonry structures themselves become part of the aesthetic.
So the retaining wall can actually be textured and colored to match the floor.
Yes, the textures of the vertical walls can be specifically coordinated with the patterns stamped into the horizontal concrete floor. The entire landscape feels intentionally designed as one cohesive, monolithic unit.
That sounds amazing.
It gets better. You can pour what's called a cantilevered seating wall right into the perimeter of the patio.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand this. A cantilevered wall, meaning it is structurally anchored into the retaining wall on one side, and it basically floats horizontally out over the patio on the other side.
Yes.
Without vertical supports underneath it.
That is correct. The physics of the retaining wall's deep structural core support the weight of the cantilevered bench. And because it is poured concrete, this built-in floating seating can be colored and textured to match the exact specifications of the patio base.
Wow.
It completely eliminates the need to purchase or maintain bulky outdoor furniture, because the architecture itself is the furniture.
That is wild. Given the intense chemistry we just talked about, though, the hydration windows, the densifying powders, the sealers, and, the heavy machinery required to build cantilevered walls, I have to imagine the installation process is highly sensitive.
It requires a lot of expertise, yes.
So what does this all mean for the homeowner? If I decide to pull the trigger on this, how long is my yard actually in an active construction zone? What is the practical reality here?
The source indicates a surprisingly efficient timeline, actually.
Mm.
A standard residential patio typically takes 3 to 5 days to complete from start to finish.
Oh, really? That fast?
Yeah. That includes excavating the old site, compacting the soil, laying the aggregate base, setting the forms, pouring the slab, the critical stamping process, returning to wash away the release agent, and finally applying the protected sealer.
That is remarkably fast compared to grading a yard and laying thousands of individual bricks by hand. But let's talk about that final step you mentioned, the protective sealer. Because while the concrete itself is a fortress, we know the harsh sun is undefeated. It will eventually dull even the best iron oxide pigments if it's left unprotected.
You're right. UV exposure and friction from daily foot traffic are the primary enemies of decorative concrete. The defense mechanism is a high-quality acrylic or polyurethane sealer.
Okay.
Contractors apply this initial clear coat immediately after the final washing phase.
What exactly is that sealer doing at a microscopic level?
Well, concrete, even when densified by hardeners, is inherently porous. It has microscopic capillaries.
Right.
The liquid sealer seeps into those capillaries and cures into a hard, plastic-like film. It creates a non-porous barrier.
So it blocks water.
It repels rain, it stops automotive fluids like oil from penetrating and staining a driveway, and it blocks organic stains from wet leaves or spilled food. But, as a barrier, it takes the brunt of the environmental abuse.
So the sealer is essentially a sacrificial wear item.
Precisely. The structural integrity of the slab will last for decades, but preserving the vibrant colors requires a proactive maintenance routine. Property owners have to plan to reseal their decorative surfaces every 2 to 3 years.
What does that process look like?
The process involves thoroughly pressure washing the surface to remove all the ingrained dirt from the stamped textures. Once the concrete is completely dry, you apply a fresh, thin coat of the liquid sealer.
And the guide notes that applying this fresh sealer instantly revives the color depth, right?
It really does.
It's like waxing a car or wetting a dry stone. Suddenly the colors pop and look a mile deep again because you've restored that optical barrier.
It brings the vibrancy right back to day one. However, there is a very explicit critical warning in the source regarding winter maintenance that you must heed.
Oh.
You must absolutely avoid using harsh chemical deicers or rock salt on stamped concrete.
Why? Will the salt eat through the acrylic sealer?
It is much worse than that. Using chemical deicers causes a physical fracture process called spalling. Yes. Chemical deicers work by lowering the freezing point of water. They melt the ice into a liquid, which then easily penetrates the microscopic pores of the concrete.
But wait, didn't we just say the sealer blocks that?
It blocks a lot of it, but no sealer is 100% impenetrable, especially as it wears down over those 2 or 3 years. So this liquid spa water gets in. But when the temperature drops even further at night, that trapped liquid water freezes again.
And water expands by roughly 9% when it turns into ice.
Exactly. That massive internal expansion creates intense hydraulic pressure just below the surface of the slab. It literally pops the armor-plated top layer of the concrete right off.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it flakes away the stamp texture and the broadcast color layer we talked about earlier. It is permanent structural damage.
So what are you supposed to do when it snows?
If you get an ice storm, the source strictly recommends using standard sand for traction, never chemical de-ice.
That is a crucial warning. So, to summarize the key takeaways for you listening, stamped concrete isn't just a superficial decorative afterthought.
Not at all.
When you're dealing with extreme environments that feature brutal thermal cycling, expansive clay soils, and intense UV rays, it is a highly engineered, solid surface structural solution. It physically fights off the shifting earth, it stops weeds from germinating, it locks out pests, and it delivers high-end organic design, provided you protect that chemical engineering with a simple pressure washing and resealing schedule every couple of years.
It is a remarkable synthesis of industrial strength and aesthetic design. And I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder, drawn from a tiny, easily overlooked detail at the very end of the source material.
Ooh, what's that?
We talked about applying that acrylic sealer to protect the concrete. But a sealed, non-porous surface becomes incredibly slick when it gets wet from rain or sprinklers.
Right, I've walked on a wet, sealed concrete before. It can feel like walking on an ice rink.
It is a significant slip hazard. So to mitigate that physics problem, contractors actually mix a micro-engineered slip-resistant aggregate, specifically materials like aluminum oxide or specialized silica sand, directly into that final clear coat of liquid sealer before they roll it on.
Wait, really?
Yes, it goes on completely invisible to the naked eye. It doesn't alter the visual appearance of the cobblestone shadowing or the wood plank texture at all, but it provides essential microscopic traction for your shoes.
That's genius.
So the next time you are walking through a high-end resort, a theme park, or even just up a custom residential driveway, take a moment to look down. Consider how many invisible microengineered chemical tricks are hiding in the very ground beneath your feet. They're silently keeping you safe, resisting the extreme weather, all while perfectly mimicking the natural world.
I love that perspective. You want the cobblestone street, but you need the fortress. And the chemistry of stamped concrete actually gives you both, hiding in plain sight. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking closely at the built environment around you, keep questioning how things actually work, and we will see you next time.